Normally we read James 3 and we say, blah, 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 taming the tongue, don't be verbally abusive, don't be mean with your words, etc. Sticks and stones may hate my bones, words never hurt me. No, they won't. Yes, they will hurt you. I'm not approaching it from that perspective. Let me point this one out here. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. For we all stumble in many ways, and if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, able to bridle his whole body. So, reading the text, Lily, what does yours say in verse 1?
Not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, but because you know that we who teach will be judged strictly.
Thank you. Please close your book for the time being. We'll do that after, okay? I know. So, chapter 3, verse 1. Not many of you should become teachers. So this is not just control your mouth because there's good things that happens when you control your mouth. This is control your mouth in the context of the fact of teachers are judged with a double portion of judgment compared to those who don't teach. Those of us who teach will be judged more strictly than those of you who do not teach. As a result, we're supposed to watch our mouths more than those who do not teach. So this taming the tongue thing is in the context of what he says in verse 1. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. Are you catching that? Let that sink in. Not many of you should become teachers. This whole passage on taming the tongue is in the context of James's exhortation to those who teach. Those who would seek to give any sort of words from their mouths in an instructional fashion. Please clean the stove, please clean the table, please wash the dishes. This is how you do it. This is how you don't do it. Sounds a lot like parenting, doesn't it? So when we're gone and Isaac is in charge, he's responsible to teach you what to do and how to do it. So when I'm gone and Mom is in charge, or whatever the case, we're in charge together, she is more responsible for doling out instruction and those sorts of things. I will be gone in October. She will be teaching you. I will be gone for a meeting. She will be teaching you. Our responsibility is to bite our tongues. And if you seek to instruct others, you will be judged doubly for what comes out of your mouth. Those who are for whom you are responsible. Which means you can't just shoot off at the mouth. Which means there are principles for learning how to be effective in your teaching, in your leadership, in your ministry, in your service, in your love. For as the body, chapter 2, verse 26, apart from the spirit is dead, so also faith apart from works is dead. You cannot teach effectively unless you work effectively. You cannot speak and say what you have if you're not executing on it. at least on a somewhat of a consistent basis. You have been given the resources needed to work from the position of consistent execution. Consistent execution is not something you struggle towards. It's something you lead and rule from. Sin is the exception. It's not something we constantly deal with the way we think of. We're not sinners that are saved by grace. We're saints who are seated with Christ in heavenly places, and we rule from there. And sin is designed to be the exception to the rule once we come to know the Lord and are growing in Him. The more we grow in Him, the less we sin. This is natural. People say, oh no, you're just a poor miserable sinner. You're going to sin. You don't have a choice. You do. There are always going to be two trees in the garden. You have to pick each day which tree you're going to eat from. The principles He gave you, which lead to life, or your own whatever. The principles the enemy gives you that lead to death. But you think they add more things to you. They give you extra modifiers, extra dice, extra, constitution checks or whatever the case. Pardon the D&D analogies. But you get what I'm saying. The extra energy that you can use. GX, VMAX, you name it, 3 to 5 energies. Flip a coin heads. Extra 60-80 damage for every coin that lands heads. This is not about that. This is about flowing from Him. He's given you the tree of life and the opportunity of true power. Or you can take the counterfeit pretense of power. Now, if He tells you, go and build something, and He's not going to tell you what to do, then you're left with the resources that He has put inside of you. Or you can take the resources the enemy has that are counterfeits, but they look shiny. And the way of that path is death, ultimately. Walk in the principles, walk in what He's given you, or walk in your own thing or the enemy's own thing. If He gives you the opportunity to walk in out of your own design, then use the resources He's given you by design to execute in the path He's put you on. Pam, do you have anything to say?
I need to clarify your take on verse 3.
Go
Chapter
ahead.
3, verse 1. Are you expositing this so that you're saying that only people who are teachers need to watch the things that come out of their mouth, the rest of 3 about the tongue?
Am I saying that? I'm saying chapter 3, the context for chapter 3 is chapter 3, verse 1. Those people who seek out to instruct, to teach, whether that's they have the redemptive gift of teach, they look for the office of teaching, they seek or desire to teach.
Okay.
The rest of the chapter 3, because verse 2 always follows verse 1. Read in context. So the context for taming the tongue is chapter 3, verse 1.
Are you talking about verse 3?
No, I meant
Chapter
verse
3.
1. I'm just chapter 3. Well, chapter 3 is about taming the tongue. And
Like,
so,
I was confused because I thought you said verse 3, but verse 3 for me says when you put bits
Right.
into the mouths of horses
Mhm.
to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal.
and what that's
So
relating to
confused.
is the tongue. Okay,
Mhm.
we'll read the rest of that because that's really critical. But I think that chapter 3 is for everyone. I think everyone needs to understand the power of their tongue, and more so anybody who does teaching and instruction.
This is not about anybody who does. This is given to everybody. James is talking to everybody, and he's saying to everybody, not many of you should become teachers, should seek out that.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably for like a humongous crowd of people.
A group of churches in the city in Jerusalem or wherever, the 12 tribes scattered abroad. She's talking to Jews, Jewish believers. All of y'all. Not many of you should become. So he's sifting everybody out. All the people who would seek to teach as a result of ambition, as a result of skill, as a result of degrees only, apart from the work of the Holy Spirit that sanctifies you and helps you to guard your tongue, put a guard over your mouth. What I am saying and how I'm expositing this is that we've missed verse 3 from the rest of the equation. James is talking to a crowd and he's saying qualifiers. Then he moves into taming the tongue, which applies to everybody, but more so it applies to teachers. So he's saying, hey, if you're going to seek out teaching, you need to have all of this other stuff completely in alignment. You need to be growing. There needs to be fruit. So we're used to just reading it and say, tame your tongue, don't talk dirty, blah, blah, you're a believer. No. Those of you who are teaching, this is going to get hopped up on you even more.
Those of you who are teaching, you're going to like experience much more of a, you're supposed to be at a higher level, I'm thinking. Like, so
Bingo.
you're supposed to be brought up to a higher level, to a higher cause, and be in a light and example to those who haven't learned that or something.
Correct. So go to, Lily, go to 1 Timothy 3.
No, you're right. It was back a little bit.
I was like, what?
Yeah. No, definitely after that.
It has the phrase able to teach, but start with verse 2, which is the context for the phrase able to teach, and move through verse 4, from verse 2 through verse 4.
You want me to read it aloud?
Yes.
Now the overseer is to be above reproach, faithful to his wife, temperate, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not given to drunkenness, not violent but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. He must manage his own family well and see that his children obey him, and he must do so in a manner worthy of full respect.
For if someone does not know how to manage his household, how will he care for for God's church? So, most of these things have to do, to some degree, with the words that come out of your mouth and the meditations that come out of your heart. It talks about him being able to teach, but it also talks about gentleness, self-controlled, sober-minded, hospitable, respectable, gentle, not violent, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. Not many of you should become teachers. Now, I am guilty of having been not gentle, having been violent, having been quarrelsome, not having been self-controlled, being drunk in anger, or whatever the case. And on and on and on and on and on. Our question is the teacher growing in this? The people who are seeking out to teach, who are designed to teach, made to teach, or even seeking out to teach, are they?
Are they willing to give up on what they thought they were doing was completely justified? Are they willing to give up the things that they thought were perfect and fine? Or are they willing to actually go before God and say, I did what you told me to do, no matter the consequences?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So she swear to their own hurt. So we take this passage and don't just pull out, tame your tongues, don't talk dirty, don't be nasty, but because some of you are desiring to teach, many of you are, Many of you shouldn't, because we got to get the issues with the mouth first in line before you can be teaching, because if you don't have the stuff in line, what's going to come out of your mouth is not going to be straight. It's not going to be true. It's not going to be good, pure, of good report, praiseworthy. Which means those of you who have any grains of leadership or desire to teach at all, or instruct at all, or lead at all, are going to be proven and tested, especially in the area of your mouth. Because all of us are stuck in various furnaces and fires. It's called a fiery trial for a reason. It's meant to burn all the crap out of you. The things that can create offense, that can cause compromise, that lead to a broken weapon or a broken vessel. The air pockets that can cause you to immediately explode in the furnace. Our responsibility is to go through the process of being refined, so that, and fired, so that we can stand what the Lord is wanting to put on us, in us, or how He is wanting to use us, so we don't buckle in the heat of battle.
But it's definitely still gonna hurt.
Oh yeah.
Like, no matter how much you try to get away from it, it's still gonna hurt.
Huh?
You just can't get away from the pain that some trials, no, most trials can give.
Yeah. And you are responsible for keeping your mouth about you in the midst of the trial. Because He is using a number of people to teach. People say, well, solution A is don't seek to teach. That's not going to happen, because there's going to be a whole lot of people that seek to teach.
And there's gonna be a whole lot of people who God actually told,
James
hey,
is
you're gonna teach.
warning us, if A, then B. If you seek to teach, then this is what needs to happen.
Plus, if teaching is part of your birthright, you don't want to not walk in your birthright because you're afraid you can't control your mouth.
Bingo.
Agreed.
But people who are in a teaching position need to be going through the pain of walking into self-control and controlling their mouth. So, for any of you who haven't heard the rest of chapter 3, man.
Go ahead.
So, the verse 3 that you were talking about. Indeed, we put bits in horses' mouths so they may obey us and turn their whole body. Do you all know what a bit is?
Some food.
No.
Oh.
What's that?
Food.
No.
No.
It's a
Simplified definition.
It's kind of like when you go to the dentist and they put that flat
Okay.
thing
In your mouth.
in your mouth that keeps it open.
Mhm.
It's kind of like that, but it's connected to, like, I think it's connected to the reins.
Connected to the halter in the reins.
It's a
And
piece of metal
that
that
way you
goes in
can
a
turn
horse's
it.
mouth that's connected to reins so that you can turn the horse where you want it to go.
Because what it's pressing on is the sensitive inside of its cheek. And so when you turn this way, it leads it this
So
way.
what?
Turn this way, it leads it that way. And that's what a bit is in the horse's mouth. So it's the purpose of something in your mouth to make you go in a certain direction. Okay? That's important to this verse. Or in a ship, you think about a ship or a big boat. So large, and they're driven by fierce winds, yet they're turned by a very small rudder where the pilot desires. Do you know what the rudder of a ship looks like?
Yeah.
Isn't it like the back that makes it turn?
Yeah, but it's so if you think about a huge container ship, you know, the rudder might be the size of this table,
Mm-hmm.
and you know the
But it's
ship
still
would
the
be bigger than
smartest-
our land,
But
kind of thing.
it's still the smallest part of the boat.
Right, and it does steer the course. It shifts where it goes in the water.
It's
Okay.
It's the smallest part of the boat, but it's like the most needed.
It is a small part of the
Mm-hmm.
boat, correct.
Almost.
So also the tongue.
Right, so a tongue is a little member. It's a small part of our body, yet it boasts great things. So, like a great forest, see how great a forest a little fire kindles. So, if you got a bonfire in the middle of the big forest, and the wind comes by and it blows some of the sparks, into the next tree. You know, thousands and thousands and thousands of acres can burn if it's not put under control really fast. And we've seen that over and over and over again in California. They've got just massive fires because it's so dry.
And because of their statewide iniquity.
So what the point here is that something very, very small can cause a very, very large issue in your life, a lot of sin. So the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. The tongue is also set among our members that it defiles the whole body and sets the course of nature and sets on fire the course of nature and is itself set on fire by hell. So he's got a very negative view about people and their words in this point.
As a redemptive gift of profit, I can imagine why.
For every kind of beast and bird and of reptile and creature in the sea is tamed, the tongue, or has been tamed by mankind. No man can tame the tongue. It is an unruly evil full of deadly poison. With our tongue we bless God and Father, and with it we curse men, who have been made in the similitude, this is what it says, in the similitude of God.
In the image,
of
of God.
God.
My Lord. Yep.
Out of the same mouth proceeds blessing and cursing. My brothers, this should not be so. We should not be able to turn and curse somebody with one word and go bless somebody with the next. That's not what our tongues and our hearts were made for. That doesn't represent God well. Does a spring of water send forth fresh and bitter water? Does a spring have in this moment it's pouring out fresh water, in this moment it's pouring out salt water? No. The spring pours out all fresh water or all salt water or occasionally all brackish water, but not separate. Whatever it does the same. A fig tree, does it also bear olives or grapes? No, just figs. Therefore, we should be producing consistently what comes out of our mouth. It shouldn't change with our audience. So, Isaac, this is something I've heard a lot of about you. You walk with us and talk with us and even treat Lily and Emmaus one way in front of us or in our home because you know what's expected of us. But when you're outside of the home and you're with your neighborhood friends, you morph into something different and treat them differently or even talk about us differently. And you do exactly the same. And I don't know if you do or not. So, but it is something to be careful of. You can't let how you represent yourself change with who you're with. Who you are is who you are. So
Correct.
be careful with that. Okay? That's the essence of this untamable tongue and the essence of what they're talking about here. You've got to watch what comes out of your mouth. And we all know the verse that says, what comes out of our mouth? Out of the overflow of our
Heart, the mouth speaks.
Exactly. So if you've got this mixture coming out of your mouth, that means there's a mixture where?
In our heart.
Yeah, which means you're not walking well with God. Okay? If you can allow yourself to go blah, 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 curse, blank, whatever, and with this audience because you feel like you're cool, you feel like it's expected or you're comfortable, even if you can control it over here, this is an indication of where your heart is. The worst things that come out of your mouth is an indication of where your heart is. So get your heart right with the Lord. Get your thoughts right with the Lord. And watch what changes in your mouth.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's what I have to say about that.
And it all points back to this is most reflected in those who teach. Those who teach are more visible. So because of their influence, they will be held to a higher standard. Whether or not anybody agrees with it or likes it. This is why you've seen in the last 3.5 years, you've seen this transformation happen in the president. He has gone from being a mouthy wacko to somebody who's got quite a bit more gentleness in his mouth. Look at the speeches now versus the speeches then. You've seen a transformation because people have been praying for him. There should also be a transformation in each of you, consummate with what the Lord has placed in you and where your desires are in terms of impact and influence for the kingdom. And being changeable and representing as two different forms of behavior in front of us and with your friends, hiding things from us and being inconsistent in front of us, being inconsistent in front of your friends, will lead you to this place where you create this instability in your life.
It gives the enemy a foothold too.
So, Father, as we spend time soaking, we ask you to help us unpack one area. I'm not saying two, one area where we need to focus and make improvements on verbally, so that we can engage in every good and perfect thing that you have for us.